The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us on the Leaders in Housing Counseling call. We've got a crowded call with a bunch of excellent guests today, so we're going to get started right away. Very glad to have you here, and the agenda is that we're going to have Afreen Alam from the National Urban League talking about our creating a new task force to deal with HUD and try to get a good sense of what people would like to get improved with HUD and our relationship with HUD and how the work we do with HUD. And it's an opportunity to really elevate these issues with HUD. We're going to have Ken Inandami from the New York Mortgage Coalition. He's been doing a lot of good work about how to think about renaming our business and the term housing counselor. And we've got Mark McCardle from Treasury who will join us at 1:30. Mark is the man who's responsible for HAMP and many of the MHA programs. But he's going to talk to us about the borrower post-modification counseling program, which is an opportunity both to expand agencies' work and getting paid for it. And we're going to do a kind of a rapid-fire news you should know just to bring you up to date on things we've been working on and make sure that you're up to date on the latest things. So on this call, we're going to try to move the dial forward a little and make some progress on some of the issues that have been challenging our industry. And let me just see, is Afreen on the line?
No, we don't have Afreen yet.
We don't have Afreen. Okay, so Ken, are you ready to step up here? And why don't we jump in on the big question of the day. So just as a prefacing mark, there's been a lot of conversations about repositioning housing counseling, and I think you all know that we're really trying to figure out how to create a world where people go to a housing counselor before they make their major financial decisions. So before they talk to a real estate agent, before they sign a sales agreement, before they sign a mortgage agreement application, or before they do a modification agreement. And whenever you kind of have these conversations, you start. The first problem is that it's sort of what do we call ourselves? And there's been, frankly, a lot of people pointed out there's some baggage around the name housing counselor and the concept of counseling, and that there's been some dissatisfaction that's been around for a long time. Now, when I started in this business, we actually called the job loan counselors, and we quickly figured out that wasn't the right fit. It wasn't inclusive enough of our work, and moved on to housing counseling. We're talking the mid-'80s and late '80s there, and we moved on and moved to a new title. And last year we had our meeting in D.C. with actually the first national meeting of the National Housing Resource Center, and this was one of the big topics. We did a survey ahead of time, and there was certainly dissatisfaction with housing counseling. The group, I think, as a whole, really felt we needed to change the name. And we're kind of at the point now where we need to move forward on this issue. So hopefully many of you know Ken Inandami. He is not only the head of the New York Mortgage Coalition and a longtime person involved with the industry, and he's also on the board of the National Housing Resource Center, but he's headed up our messaging task force. So Ken, what have you got to report? So we can't hear Ken. Matthew, do you know what's going on?
I don't. We should have him. Are you there, Ken?
Ken, can you hear us?
We do have Afreen if we want to come back to Ken.
Okay. Man, that's a big moment here. And Ken, do you want to just try to click your the green microphone on your thing and then mute and unmute it and see if that works to open up the line?
How's that? Can you hear me now?
You're in. All right.
Okay.
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
Okay. Sorry for that glitch. Thanks, everyone. Let me get right into it. Thank you for that intro, Bruce. So the term counselor has had some negative connotations that we're aware of, and it suggests that one has a problem that warrants a counselor. Conversely, homeownership advisor, it connotes the notion that it's the objective of the person is to advise and to provide orientation through the home purchasing process. The final decision, of course, is left up to the client. So last month, the NHRC Advisory Board got together in Washington, D.C., and one of the agenda items was to gain some kind of consensus, at least among the board members, on how we would reterm or rename what we are, who we are, and what we do. And the notion came up that we should look at the term advisor. And the full formal term would be a HUD certified housing advisor. And we felt that, and the board unanimously agreed on this term, but we felt that we should really put it to the membership at large to get a sense of how you feel about it. Whenever you make a change of this magnitude, obviously there are a lot of ramifications, not only in terms of the practical things such as stationery and business cards, but also in how we present ourselves, how we position ourselves. We feel that at this point in time, in which there are a lot of changes going on in the housing and the affordable home ownership industry, it's an inflection point, and it is an opportunity. And if we want to rename and rebrand ourselves, this would be an opportune time to consider that. One of the things that we wanted to do was to issue a SurveyMonkey to the membership, basically requesting a simple yes or no on your reaction to the term HUD Certified Housing Advisor, and then also include a comments box so that you can share whatever thoughts you have, pro or con, regarding the change, and any considerations or factors that we may have missed. That's it in a nutshell. Bruce, anything else that I should expound upon?
Well, so so the term is all 4 words, right? So we're
HUD
just
Certified
saying,
Housing Advisor, correct.
right. So, and the idea is that there's some sense of that people have been qualified and are more than just a casual advisor. This is something that the whole idea is that it's more than simply saying that somebody's an advisor or a counselor. That it's and I guess this would be integrated into the housing certification process that HUD is working on. That would be part of our proposal. That part of the thinking.
Right. And then another thing, which is maybe a little more subtle, but it gets into semantics, and that is, we feel that the term advisor connotes possibly greater value provided, and that there could be implications, financial implications for that as well. I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but language is powerful, and even the change of a single word can have implications, and we feel that, again, at this point in time, if we're going to consider a name change, now would be the time to do it.
It's definitely the right time in terms of HUD and the changes that they're doing. And we met with, Sarah Jarek was in our meeting in December, and at that point when we had this discussion, she said that HUD could implement a new name and that the logical time to do it would be around the certification process, so that this all could lead into that and make it the next step. Well, so Ken, so should agencies go out and tear up their letterhead and cut up their business cards and start over again?
I don't think there's any need to act immediately. Again, we're trying to build consensus around this name, and we're going to circulate the SurveyMonkey to elicit feedback from everyone. But I think the key thing is if we can get broad agreement, we can then take this to HUD. Sarah has already given she's very open-minded. And I'm sure this notion has crossed her mind and have been in her internal discussions as well. So I think we want to move forward methodically. We're not going to do anything rash, and we certainly want to include all the thoughts and the guidance from the membership.
Good. And so, so what are our next steps?
I think the next step is we have the draft of the SurveyMonkey already keyed up, ready to go. I think Matthew can get it out as early as probably tomorrow, so we can immediately get some feedback from the membership, certainly the people on this call, and I think that would be very constructive.
Good. That'd be great, and I think we'll work on trying to reach out to other networks as well in the housing counseling world and see if they would like to get on board and contribute to the process. So try to build a bigger, broader consensus. So this is step one in the process. So exactly. Matthew, are there any questions?
Yeah, so we have a couple. A couple we've kind of already got at a little bit, but if you could just maybe expand on. So the first is, what does HUD say about this change?
So HUD's not taken any official position. I think we've gotten a warm reception to the idea. But what Sarah had said at our meeting is that they would look to us, and us being the larger, broader community, to come up with a suggestion to submit to HUD. So I think we have an opportunity here, but they have not made a definitive statement one way or the other.
And then similarly, but just a little more specific, wouldn't HUD need to change all of their current rulemaking documents to reflect any name change that includes HUD certified? Dodd-Frank clearly uses the term housing counselor.
Okay, this is great. This is all the details that you have to deal with in these situations. So those are issues. HUD is thinking about those questions. There are ways that they can do it. It was referred to me as a DBA, which is doing business as. So there apparently are some ways to finesse this, but it is absolutely something that HUD would need to pay a lot of attention to. But that's exactly the kind of detail that has to get figured out.
And then I'll just share a couple of positive responses so far. NeighborWorks has been promoting this for years. We are not a NeighborWorks agency, but our agency, along with neighboring agencies, changed our title last year to Homeownership Advisors. I think this move is great. Let's see. Yes, we branded our network in Minnesota as the Homeownership Advisors Network over 3 years ago and have been using Homeownership Advisor for individuals delivering the service. It has been well accepted by all. That's all I've got.
Good.
Very good.
Great. Ken, do you have any other thoughts on this?
No, that's it. But again, we're looking forward to seeing the feedback from the membership. And please, once you get the survey, I would appreciate your prompt response because we want to act, as they say, when the iron's hot, we want to act. So thank you, everyone.
Big thanks for all your work on this. Big thanks to the task force that worked on it already. Quite a few of you.
By the way, Bruce, let me just also mention the other task force members. Mm-hmm. and please add if I forget anyone. But there was Linda Ingram, Jen Murphy, Cheryl Cassell, I believe Judy Hunter. And am I missing anyone?
Christine Gould, Home Free.
Right.
This is my aging memory is not going to help us here, so excuse us for those of you that we left off the list here.
Okay, but thank you, everyone on the task force, for your guidance as well. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Nice work. Thanks again, Ken. Okay. Well, let's see. And Afreen, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Yes, we can hear you clearly and perfectly. And I just as an opening remark, to just say that when one of the areas that produces the most activity, whether it's in meetings or whether it's on the listserv or whether it's emails coming out, is frustration with things involving HUD. And obviously a major source of our funding, but also HUD is our regulatory agency. And I think HUD in some ways we have a big moment with them because through Sarah, but also just the changes in the agency, we have much greater access. So this is a real opportunity. And Afreen, who works at the National Urban League, has been generous in volunteering to help head up a task force on HUD. So, Afreen, give us what you think we should look out for.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So those of you who are on the leaders listserv, you know this, that a few weeks ago, I, out of sheer frustration from having to do the personal activity report, I put out a question how people are dealing with it, and wondered about the utility of it, as well as how time-consuming it has been compared to the amount of grants that our folks are getting. So it was a tremendous response from all of you about this PAR. But going beyond PAR, the issue was raised that the reporting requirement compared to the amount of funding is really not up to par, no pun intended. So what I thought that would be a good idea was for some of us to get our brains together and collect the issues that we are currently facing in managing the HUD grant in general. So it's not limited to the personal activity report, though it's newly instituted, but also the NOFA process. HCS, I know we continue to talk about this, but no changes or significant changes that are user-friendly have been made, along with how so some of the other nitty-gritty details, how the NOFA proposals are weighed in different categories are not very transparent, for example. So in short, Bruce and I thought it would be a good idea for us to form a task force to deal with some of these issues that we face on a daily basis managing the HUD grant. And this particular time period is quite significant, as both Ken and Bruce had mentioned, that we have the years of Sarah Jarecki and HUD in general, and it would be a good time to bring some of the corrective suggestions to the table. So with that, I just wanted to solicit, really beg for volunteers from this group who would be kind and generous enough to work in this project with a number of us. And we are hoping to really put some concrete solutions on the table that can really help us as intermediaries, as well as folks who are doing this work on a daily basis. So we are looking for volunteers, in other words. And Bruce, do you want to talk about how people can just, send their names?
Absolutely. So some people have already volunteered from the last call. We have about 12 people already. So and these are brains. These are folks who are really ready to do the nitty-gritty in the trenches work on figuring out the details here. So if you've got somebody on your staff who's a HUD expert, we'd love to have them join us. Send your contact information either to Afreen or to Matthew. We'll get you on the list. And we're planning on having a first task force meeting, but scheduling it after the NFMC deadline, right?
That's right. I figured if we have that deadline, a lot of people are faced with that deadline as well. So the first call is scheduled, and hopefully it'll work with most people, is on the 22nd at 2 o'clock. And if it doesn't work with majority of the people, of course, we'll move it around. But November 22 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time is the first call that's scheduled for the task force at the moment.
Good. We will also just use this for a venue to deal with the comment issue. I hope everybody knows that the HUD certification comment period has been pushed back a month to the 12th. I think, as we said several times, it's great if individual organizations do their own comment. We'd love to figure out what things there are broad consensus on. If you've already written comments, please send it to us. We'd be glad to. We're going to try to figure out some consolidated thing that identifies the issues that people are most concerned about, that we can get a consensus on. and Matthew and I will kind of work on that end of it. Freen will take the sort of more longer term, all the issues that we've got with HUD going ahead in the future. But you know, a great opportunity, and I know there's already been some good discussion about what needs to be on the list. So let's figure out some concrete solutions to it.
Freen, could you just give people, and I'm going to type it into the chat box and we'll include it in an email after the call, but if you could just give people your email address for now, please.
Sure. It's AALAM as in mom, AALAM at NUL.org. AALAM at NUL.org.
All right, and again, we'll include that in an email after the call.
Thank you, Matthew.
Well, thank you so much, Freen. We really appreciate you stepping up on this, and I already know we've got people who are very interested in this area, so we'll do good work, I know, and anything we can do to support this, we will absolutely do. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I hope, you know, we can, I know a number of us have been thinking about it, thinking about different ideas for years now, and I'm excited about getting them together and actually making the suggestions while we have HUD detention. I'm very excited about it.
Yes, it'll be good. It'll be really good. Okay, well, thank you so much. Well, we're actually slightly ahead of the game. Mark was coming off of a different call. Mark McCardle from Treasury is coming off of a different call. Said he could only be here at after 1:30. So let's just go in a little bit into news that you should know about to try to fill people in on important information. So a favorite topic has been, as most of you know, has been to try to stop the requirement that housing counselors, should we start calling them advisors yet? Well, I'm an old dog, I have to learn the new tricks too, so it'll be a challenge, but I may flip back and forth here. But requiring people's personal Social Security number. The good news was we got Banco Popular to pull back, and then we just recently had correspondence from U.S. Bank, which was the other institution that we knew was requiring this. They have said it's all a misunderstanding, that they were giving people a choice between using the Social Security number and an ITIN number, which to me wasn't a choice that solved the problem, but actually it turns out that they believed that organizations have ITIN numbers and that you could use the ITIN number for your organization. That's unusual, and we're asking them to instead substitute in the Federal Employee ID number, the FEIN number, which I think people more commonly know. I don't know the ITIN number for my organization, but they're saying that they had not intended to require people to provide their personal number. Their case was that an authorized representative could be an attorney, could be somebody other than a professional HUD-certified housing counselor. I actually can't quite say that yet because we don't have HUD-certified advisors yet. So, but you get the idea here that there was an opportunity. They believe that they had solved the problem. I think we'll try to get them to clarify a little bit to move that away. So, but the whole idea here is that we're taking this issue off the table in every forum that we see. So please alert us if you see anything else. Put it on the listserv. This is how we know and how we can address it. But so far, so good. It sounds like we're batting 100 to go with the World Series. Let's see. The on tracking counseled mortgages. So we have made serious progress in this field, and I think we reported on the last call. HUD will use their home ownership certification form with its data fields, and counseling agencies, when that's finally released, will be able to use this, and that could be handed to the originator who's originating the loan, and in it would be the data fields that would be used to track counseling. The big breakthrough last month was we got FHFA to agree to actually collect this information They, of course, regulate Fannie and Freddie, so it's getting Fannie and Freddie to agree at the same time, which happens because they're the regulator, and that FHFA was currently working on redesigning the uniform mortgage application that is used by Fannie and Freddie and often by others to include these data fields. So this is a huge breakthrough. The challenge has been that we thought that HUD and FHFA, who had been talking, were using the same data fields. It turned out that they weren't the same. So we have done a side-by-side comparison, and we're trying to get it sorted out. Kind of the big issues are to very clearly separate housing counseling from housing education, and then what the subcategories are under there. They will track the HUD ID number and the Federal Employee ID number. They actually won't put in the housing counselor's name into the mortgage application because of some of the technical things about how information gets recorded in these applications. They only want things that can have uniform responses. But we're getting most of everything else we're looking for. So, you know, we aren't quite at the finish line, but we're very, very close, and we have a broad commitment to move forward. So very good for our work. So on housing finance and reform and housing counseling. So we had a great moment last week in the hearings in front of the Senate Banking Committee. The Senate Banking Committee formed a consumer panel, a consumer response panel, and they went out of their way to identify that there needed to be one speaker who was representing the housing counseling community. So this is a big pat on your back. This is tremendous recognition. This is exactly the kind of thing we've been working for a long time. And it was a very nice moment. Lot Diaz spoke for all of us from the National Council of La Raza. He was terrific. I thought it was sort of a very clear and direct endorsement of the work that you all are doing out in the field, why it's important for people who are buying, why it's important for people who are in trouble on their mortgage, and then the range of other issues like rental. He was, I thought, completely on point and raised issues around access and the importance of reaching into communities that are underserved traditionally, and did that really well. And also in his remarks, used in his written remarks, used the comments that we had made around how to reform the Corker-Warner legislation so that housing counseling was integrated. So this is just, this is the kind of thing that allows us to be elevated and recognized. Similarly, the Coalition for HUD Intermediaries just had a briefing for congressional staff yesterday. I wasn't at it, but they had a very impressive agenda of people who were on the list, and they were presenting the need to integrate housing counseling into the mortgage origination process, and by, I think, implication also the importance of getting it right in the housing finance reform. And they had a mix of, I think, David Birnbaum from NCRC, Paul Leach from Housing Partnership Network, and but they also had some academics there, and they had Dana Dillard from NationStar, so some lenders as well. So it was a good mix. I didn't get to see it, but I think they had done a really nice job of putting it together. Let me pause for a minute. Matthew, do we have Mark McCardle or not?
No, we do not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. So let's go to that. Oh, yes. So FHA qualified mortgage and qualified residential mortgage. So QM and QRM. So Matthew, fill us in on what's happening here.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of start with a little background. I think folks are pretty familiar with QM that the CFPB put out. Kind of the underlying rule or the idea is that lenders should have to verify that a borrower has a reasonable ability to repay the loan, and that if they do so, then they're given certain legal protection. So the CFPB had put out their rule. It kind of happened in a few different stages, but they have their rule that's ready to go now. but the Dodd-Frank also authorized agencies such as HUD and the VA that insure guarantee loans to put out their own QM definitions. So there had been a proposal by HUD for their definition of QM, which comments were due last week on, and we weighed in and just wanted to let folks know where we had come down on that. So kind of the important thing to know with the CFPB rule, there are a few, but it essentially gave two different levels of legal protection to qualified mortgages. One is safe harbor, which is more or less if you make a loan that's given safe harbor, it's very, very difficult for a borrower to challenge the legal protection. And the challenge would happen in the case of foreclosure. The borrower would be able to raise it and say that this should not have been a qualified mortgage. But so safe harbor is really difficult to attack. Then the other level is rebuttable presumption, which is still a challenge for a borrower to challenge, but it's less protected than safe harbor. So the main question with the HUD definition of a qualified mortgage was what would be the scope of the FHA loans that would be given safe harbor versus those that would get a rebuttable presumption. So the way that they had proposed the rule, they basically said that all FHA loans would get safe harbor, so would get that extra legal protection. If they had applied the rule the way CFPB had proposed it, it would have been about 75% of FHA loans would have been safe harbor, and about 20% would have been rebuttable presumption. So they're basically expanding by about 20% the number of FHA loans that get that extra legal protection. So our argument to them was basically that FHA loans should be getting more, not less legal protection. So we argued first that all FHA loans should get just the rebuttable presumption. Then we argued kind of in the alternative that if you are going to give some safe harbor to some FHA loans, that you should not expand the scope of loans that get that extra legal protection. So that was our one main argument. One good thing to point out about the HUD definition, though, one of our big issues with the CFPB's QM rule, which did have some good things about it, but it has a hard cap on 43% on the back-end ratio. We had argued that 43% would be fine if there were also allowed for compensating factors such as housing counseling. The good thing about the HUD rule is that it doesn't have that hard 43% cap. They basically keep all of the FHA underwriting requirements so that at 43%, you can go above it, it just triggers manual underwriting. So that is certainly a good thing, but we're arguing and hoping that they'll expand the scope of rebuttable presumption versus safe harbor loans. So that is HUD QM, and I'm just going to look. I think we do not have Mark yet, so I'm going to now just touch on.
Let me just jump in. That may have been a little dense for folks, and maybe you're all familiar with this. I don't know. You should let us know. Matthew has a genius for this, and it's great that he's doing it. One term that is good to know in the policy field is this term called rebuttable presumption. And the reason it's important is that the public interest lawyers, the legal services and legal aid people, this is their tool for being able to more effectively represent clients in court. Matthew, do you want to explain it in a little bit, take a second shot at what rebuttable presumption means?
Yeah, so rebuttable presumption, essentially the borrower could say, yes, the loan satisfied these criteria, but in reality, it's all about whether the borrower had the ability to repay the loan. So they could say, yes, it did satisfy these criteria, but the lender should have known that I didn't have a reasonable ability to repay the loan because, and then they could present evidence as to why the lender should have known that. Whereas the safe harbor, as long as if you tick off those boxes and it's say 5 criteria, if those are satisfied, that's the end of the question. No more questions asked.
So, and it may be in a way for some of us to understand it is that if a loan is written under the terms of qualified mortgage, it's presumed to be a safe loan. But in court, you could rebut that. You could say, yes, it does meet all these pieces, but if you look at it more closely, you think, oh, why would any person actually do this loan because it's not in their financial interest? for these reasons. And this was an incredibly important tool in the predatory lending litigation, which, and frankly, you know, a lot of predatory lending was perfectly legal by the way the loans were written, and you would they were using laws like deceptive practices rather than saying this was a direct violation of this or that law. And this concept of rebuttable presumption allow you to go and say, yes, you met the terms of this, but we're rebutting it because of these things. So did I just do that well enough? Matthew, was I fair to say that? Okay.
Yeah, I think
okay.
I think that was great.
So it all plays out in only a handful of legal cases, but these have high importance for us in our work and being able to strengthen the protections that your clients want and hopefully set standards of how servicing should be done and how origination should be done. Okay.
The kind of bottom line summary is so we're arguing that more FHA loans should have more legal protection versus that the HUD proposal would give more FHA loans less legal protection.
Okay, so Mel Watt.
Well, going to do the qualified residential mortgage.
Oh,
quickly.
okay, all right.
All right. So kind of related and or similar to qualified mortgage, and for some reason it seems like they did a pretty poor job of naming them because there's also qualified residential mortgage. So as we just explained, with qualified mortgage, it's all about whether the borrower has the ability to repay the loan and giving lenders protection when they meet certain criteria to verify that the lender has an ability to repay the loan. So qualified residential mortgage is what it's about is requiring lenders to have skin in the game. Essentially, that was something that came up a lot during the financial crisis, and in the wake of it, that lenders didn't have any skin in the game. So this would require lenders to retain a certain amount of the risk in loans that they make. But it would allow for an exception to that credit risk retention rule if the lender is making what's called a qualified residential mortgage. So the proposal here was it's put forth, I think it was 6 agencies, but it's HUD, it's the SEC. A number of different agencies put forth this proposal to how they would define what is a qualified residential mortgage or a QRM. So the proposal they came up with, somewhat controversially, was to make any loan that meets the criteria of a qualified mortgage a qualified residential mortgage. Basically just write into statute that it aligning the two. We think this was the right approach to take. As I said before, we think that, and I'm sorry, so this is aligning it with the CFPB, not the HUD qualified mortgage definition. So I apologize if this is getting a little confusing, but we thought this was the right approach. As I said, we think that there are some things that could be improved on in the CFPB qualified mortgage definition, and specifically giving people, underwriters more flexibility to go above that 43% back-end ratio. But the way the statute is written, QRM cannot be any broader than QM. So if it could have been, we would have said, you know, you should let people go beyond, give some flexibility to go above 43%. But since it can't be any broader, we think it's exactly the right approach to make it as broad as QM. So that was essentially what we said in our comments to the multiple agencies that have the QRM proposal. So, and if folks have any questions on this offline or online, feel free to weigh in. I hope I'm not getting too far into the weeds with it, but that's kind of the 2-cent summary there. And I'm just going to quickly now talk about the Mel Watt nomination. So folks may have been following this. So the director now of the FHFA is a gentleman named Ed DeMarco, who is actually a holdover from the Bush administration all these years later. There's been a lot of criticism of Mr. DeMarco, but specifically one really big complaint that advocates have is his refusal to allow Fannie and Freddie to do principal reduction. He's just steadfastly refused to do that. So that's been a huge point of contention, and there have been others as well. So I'm not even positive when. It's been months now ago that President Obama nominated Mel Watt, who is a member of Congress he represents Charlotte in the House of Representatives, Charlotte, North Carolina. He was nominated months ago. His nomination was just kind of sitting, waiting for a vote by the Senate, but was not getting put on the floor because it was just Republicans made clear that they were going to block him. There had been a lot of movement in the last month and weeks in particular, putting pressure on the White House to really to kind of step up their support of Mel Watt and really start pushing to get him confirmed. They did do that. They started reaching out to the realtors and other kind of key groups, got a lot of support for him, and got the nomination up for a vote last week. Unfortunately, and everyone knew it was going to be a close vote. The Democrats now essentially have 55 votes in the Senate and would have needed 5 Republicans to join them. They ended up getting just 2 Republicans to join them. That was Burr, who's also from North Carolina, so was supporting his home state nominee, and then Rob Portman from Ohio. And so they got 2 votes, but ended up 4 votes shy of where they needed to be. So it's kind of back to the drawing board. There's some. The Dems have said that they're gonna try to get him back, get his nomination on the floor again. There's some question because he needs to file to run for his congressional seat again if that's going to happen. So there's also, I think, exploration happening about other ways that maybe can accomplish some of the concrete goals that of getting him confirmed. So that's kind of the summary on the Mel Watt nomination.
Thanks. So 2 questions or comments that have surfaced while you were on the call. So one was that we should just have a call just on QM and QRM, which I think will just make Matthew's heart sing, which is great. So we would love to do that. So maybe we'll do some sort of a mix of educational and commentary so that you can have direct input. These are big issues that affect all of our work, but it gets to be very nitty and very gritty, as you can tell. The other comment was, I think, for the HUD Task Force and for Afreen, and which was maybe if we are unable to be part of the task force due to other duties and responsibilities, we can email her our suggestions, and that would be great. We are very, very interested in people putting their thoughts on paper. That really helps frame the conversation, whether or not you want to be on the task force. We're going to have to build the list, and we're going to then have to figure out concrete solutions. I'm hoping that we'll be able to engage with people at HUD to help us think through. Sometimes there's some rules issues that we don't always know about, so we can do this jointly with them, but we will do everything we can to make the list. So yeah, absolutely, send them in. And also your thoughts about the certification rule that's pending, or if you've already done them up. Okay, so I did shoot an email and a text message to Mark McCardle, and no answer so far. So let's go to just the back to work FHA rule. So first thing is that the directory is working really well, so very pleased with it. And I don't know, there were 90 groups on the list last week, and I know there were more coming in. So there's still room if you'd like to get in on it and get your agency listed. We have heard reports of a number of groups that have gotten quite a few calls and generated business from this, and we'll do more to promote it with the lending community in the future, so hopefully this will be an opportunity. So several people have raised the issue with the FHA back-to-work mortgages that there was some expectation that the counseling be 1 hour long. And if you were on the briefing that Betsy Cromwell and Sarah Jarik did recently on Back to Work, they were very clear that that was a minimum, and they really didn't expect that that would be what those counseling agencies would be doing, that the counseling agencies should do what they need to do to meet the need. And I think we have a responsibility to our clients and to our work, so that we want to make sure that these are really in-depth counseling sessions. I think it's unfortunate that they mentioned this idea of 1 hour. It's clearly some of these people are going to need a lot of work. They're going to need a lot of support. They're coming through, they're impacted by the recession. That's by the nature of the loan product. So we really want to do a good job on this. I mean, one of the things that will affect us in our business is that this will be under the microscope of our work, and if we don't if we don't perform well on this, I mean, the loans will still be underwritten, they will still be reviewed by a lender, but this is a place where we can shine, where we can really show what we do and really help people who are coming out of tough financial circumstances. This would be a great opportunity for us to do the right thing, and it's hard to imagine that an hour will be the right amount of time for most people coming into this loan product. So please let us support you in any way we can in doing the job that needs to get done on these mortgages. There have been some questions that people have raised about how much they should charge a service or a lender for the FHA mortgage counseling, and it really is up to you. There isn't a standard. I'm encouraging people to think about charging $250 and $300 rather than a more token fee like $50. But it really is up to you and your marketplace and your organization. And I know some organizations are not charging, so it's a bit of a free marketplace out there. But we hope that you'll do the most to make this work that will support yourselves financially. So we must have. I'm
going to jump in, and we just got a message that Mark is jumping on now, so he's going to be just a minute.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Well, let me just open up this part of the conversation, and we'll just go over time a little bit. I'm sorry to do that to you, but it's an important topic. Here's kind of the opportunity with this MHA borrower post-modification counseling. The way it's framed, it's up to the servicer to decide who they contract with to provide these services, but many of your organizations have relationships with servicers now, and absolutely the fact that you're working with a family right now and to get them a modification, it would really make sense that you continue that work in the post-modification phase rather than hand it off to another agency that might have the contract for doing the post-mod counseling. You really want to kind of keep those parties, you want to be the continuous voice of support and reason with your clients. So I think it makes a lot of sense to approach servicers that you're working with currently and ask them to provide the service and that you get funding through it and that you can both work with your existing clients that you're working with now, and if they want to refer people to you, you'd be glad to take them as well under this program. But I think you need to reach out to the servicers. I'm reaching out to servicers to sort of pitch the idea. I'm not saying that you go to any one agency. I'm saying you should really try to work with all the agencies in your network to use the to get the best opportunities for post-mod counseling for your borrowers. Is Mark on the line now?
No, he's not yet.
Isn't showing up. So our understanding is that there's that Treasury is paying an extra $400 to the servicers for the delivery of this service, and that we're hoping what will happen is that if you provide post-mod counseling, that you get that money, and it would be more than one session. It would be a sort of a multiple-step session where you'd work with people about getting their back-end ratios in line and restoring their credit. so that they're more likely to succeed in their modification. And so, it'll be probably several sessions, but that we're hoping that you get most, if not all, of that money from each of the ones that get done. And that you shouldn't, that really you're going to have to establish the relationship with the servicer to do the contracting on this. But that I think that's a great opportunity, and I think there's some receptivity to doing this among some of the servicers. So no Mark yet, huh?
No, there's some issue. He just sent me an email that he should be on, so we may not be able to get him at the moment.
Okay. So, well, do people have questions they'd like to raise? Do we have any, either anybody's raised their hand or wants to put it in the comment box?
So I'm going to go. So Mark's colleague, Danielle Johnson-Kutch, is just getting onto the phone. She's calling in now, so we're going to go to her. It's just going to be 1 second, though.
Yeah, you'll need to flip over on that.
So for a question, is there a national effort to align with servicers on the Treasury program?
So, I mean, I guess the question is specifically is to align specific agencies to the program, and the answer to that is no. I'm making personal calls to a number of the servicers to encourage them to work with local agencies or agencies they have relationships with, and I think there was a feeling early on that there would only be one contractor with each servicer, and there's nothing in the directive that requires that, and so I think the idea is that where they've got working relationships, they should just expand them to include this program. And I will reach out to as many of these services as I can personally. Certainly, you should be doing the same as well, and or you have relationships, or you want to build those relationships.
All right, and Danielle, are you there now?
I am on. Sorry that there's been some technical issues here. Mark was running from another meeting, and then when he tried to dial in, wasn't able to access, so we apologize for that.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thanks.
And what we've got over 100 managers of housing counseling agencies on the call. So I think we'll go a little bit over our usual time so that we get a chance to get your feedback and get people the information they need. We're glad to have you here. Would you like to give us a quick outline of the program and how it impacts housing counseling agencies?
Sure. So I think, Bruce, you had started to introduce the program, but the main thing is that the guidance from Treasury always applies to non-GSE loans only. There are some other pilots out there that Fannie is doing, but this specific guidance in our supplemental directive applies to non-GSE loans. It'll be effective March 1st, 2014, and with the effective date of the SD, servicers will be required to offer multi-stage financial counseling to any borrower that enters a trial or is deemed at risk in a permanent mod, which we've defined as a borrower who's in good standing in their permanent HAMP modification that has been at least 30 days delinquent twice in the last 12 months. So we do have a requirement that servicers solicit the borrowers once in writing and make a reasonable effort to contact the borrower through at least 4 telephone calls. Now, servicers, this is a piece that they can contract out to a vendor, a housing counseling agency, and have them try to contact the homeowners as well. So, and then as you mentioned, there is an increase in incentives to the servicer. This incentive is for this effort as well as some of the other changes over time that we've made to the program. So it's not a direct link just to counseling. So that's the basic overview. Bruce, as you were mentioning, servicers can contract with one vendor or multiple vendors. Whatever they do, they have to have sufficient coverage to be able to cover the number of borrowers in their portfolio that will need this assistance. So that's a pretty high-level overview of what we've done. I'd be happy to take questions if you had them.
And we do have a bunch of questions, and I will say that Mark is on, and it looks like he is just about to get on. So, hi, Mark, are you there?
I am on now.
Great, thank you. Bruce, do you want to catch Mark up real quick?
I heard some of it because I could listen only, but I couldn't. I've heard Danielle speak, so.
Okay, great. Well, let's dive into the questions. I'm sure that between the two of you can cover these. So
Danielle's twice as smart as I am, so.
All right. So I'm just going to read off some questions we've got in here. Some will be kind of statements as well. It sounds like services will be able to refer to only agencies they have a relationship with, not giving the homeowner a choice of where they go for counseling. Is that correct, or is that? Could you respond to that?
So for this project, yes, they're going to have a primary, to meet the requirements under HAM. They're going to basically have a relationship with a counselor who they will share information about the mod to and be able to do things like a warm transfer with. Obviously anyone can go see a counselor and access any counseling they want outside of the constricts of this program. But what we were trying to do is to spur servicers to establish relationships with counselors, which we hoped could last even beyond the program and create sort of an ongoing referral mechanism.
But I think also to be clear here, what they may be asking is if they don't have a relationship currently, but they are counseling people that the homeowners that belong to that servicer, that they could establish that relationship.
Yeah.
And basically become one of the participating agencies.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right, another question. What is the expected duration of post-mod counseling? Say 6 months, or is it open-ended?
Danielle, you want to take that one?
Yeah, there's no, we don't say a specific period of time. We do suggest at least 4 sessions that the borrower cover, that the counselor offer with the borrower. So
it's not a one and done option, but we don't specify, a period of time.
Was there a rationale behind 4 sessions? Interesting number.
Well, we based a lot of our, Danielle, you can chip in here. We based a lot of our evidence on what Fannie was doing with their pilot and what we'd seen sort of done with holistic counseling in the past. So we wanted to pick a number that wasn't too onerous because, we're only paying so much for this. On the other hand, that we thought was more than, obviously you can't solve all a borrower's problems in one session, so we knew it had to be multi-stage counseling. Danielle, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that basically covers it.
So there's a couple kind of themes that are coming out in some questions. I'll just kind of give them to you as categories. One is about who's going to be paying for the counseling. If you could just elaborate on that, please.
So we're not, we are prohibited under sort of how we're doing. We couldn't pay a fee for service model or anything like that. All we could do was increase our upfront incentive. And so the servicer will be in charge of establishing the contract and setting the rate of reimbursement. As I think Bruce mentioned on the part that I was on listen-only mode, we are increasing our incentives by $400 on the upfront incentive. So servicers are getting additional funds on the upfront, which this is one of the requirements we're paying them for, but this is the primary one. And we've seen various estimates for costs. So Danielle, do you anything to add on that?
No.
So Treasury would think in a multi-event counseling that $400 would be a reasonable fee if the servicer chose to pay that.
Right. And remember, we're paying basically, because we couldn't pay selectively for just those who take it, we're paying for everybody. So we know that counseling, if someone took advantage of all 4 sessions, it easily could exceed $400, but they're getting paid for people who refuse to do any counseling as well. We basically took the 400 number based on modeling estimates of what we thought, even if this succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, what the take-up rate would be. And go ahead.
So to understand that, the servicer is required to offer the availability of counseling by an approved housing counseling agency. Not everybody takes it up. So let's say you've got a client in the field who is a mess, and which a lot of our folks are, and have lots of problems with their finances, and it ends up taking 8 sessions. So could the servicer pay $600?
Yeah, and there's nothing, we are not dictating what they pay, and we are paying enough to more than compensate them for, if a particular borrower took additional help. And there's 2 populations we wanted to target, as you know, not every new trial going forward, as well as those who seem to be having trouble paying their current modification. So they're in a permanent mod, and they're showing some sort of difficulty with their payments. They're starting to miss payments, where we require servicers to refer all those folks to counseling. Now, if you're a new trial and you got referral and you said, no, I don't need it, but then you end up down the road missing a payment, you theoretically would be referred again to counseling at that point. So we require them to refer for both categories.
So, and Mark, I want to just correct something. I said 4 sessions. That actually isn't in our guidance. That was something that we based some of our modeling off of, an estimated 4 sessions, but that's actually not a hard requirement in the SD. So, as you're setting up these relationships with the servicers, it could be certainly set up so that it's just multi-stage counseling, and there's no hard cutoff at 4. So whatever you're negotiating with that servicer for, you can put that in there so that those borrowers that need more, that's part of your contract with that servicer.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right. You should build in some flexibility to this model that best serves the needs of the clients. Not all these folks are going to be the same. Some maybe only need 2 sessions. Some need 8.
So the other kind of broad theme in a lot of questions we're getting is, I guess, concern that a lot of local agencies, that servicers are only going to go to either big national call centers or larger agencies, and that smaller agencies will kind of be shut out of this. I know you don't have any control over who servicers pick, but could you just elaborate on what agencies may be able to, how they may be able to foster or work themselves into this process?
So we don't dictate necessarily how the counseling occurs. So we don't say it has to be a phone, warm transfer. Theoretically, a servicer could arrange a different setup with a network of local counseling agencies. I think a big issue for a servicer is they're going to want to deal with a network or something that covers the whole country, so because these big guys have loans all over the place. So they'll want local partners in each jurisdiction, but we don't specify exactly how the service is delivered. We are encouraging servicers to look at all their options, and some are considering sort of networks of local counseling agencies that they've worked with in the past. Danielle, do you have anything?
No, the real requirement for the servicers is that they make sure they have sufficient coverage.
And that's going to be a big driving concern for them because they have loans all over.
One likely scenario, which I know some services are considering, is that there be a national relationship with a call center that's a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, as well as local relationships as well that allow you to do both, that it's not an either-or. And, if there's a servicer who's saying they'll only do the national call center and not the local, I'd love to hear about it and see if we can nudge them along to be more open-minded.
Yeah, and that makes sense to us. Maybe you can do the first session by phone with a national center, but then you're referred to the local partner who does the in-depth, like, how are you doing with your budget type of work.
Yeah, that's also great if we could work that out too.
And Treasury will help facilitate conversations if that if you want help with that.
Well, that would be a good idea. We should do that.
Okay.
We're going to take you up on this. So let's figure out offline how we might pull that off. Maybe we have a joint call with some key servicers, something like that.
Right.
Or maybe it's one-on-one.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we won't push any one thing, but we're going to say, here's some different models you can consider, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Good. There's a question about reporting requirements. Are there going to be, will each servicer have its own reporting requirements with Treasury and with the vendor?
Well, the vendor will definitely have to provide some data to the servicer because we're requiring data of the servicer. We're basically going to require how many folks did you refer to counseling, how many people took up on the counseling. We're going to ask how many sessions did each person get because we want to sort of see how this is implemented. If we see servicers who seem to be not doing a full faith and credit, everybody else is at 15% or whatever, and they're at 5, then we'll know who to target for additional assistance. We also want them to track on some level the performance of that, but that won't be passed on to the agency. They'll know that from their own system of record. But you guys will have to provide data as to how many folks actually, that you counseled and how many sessions did those folks actually take up on.
Are those the data fields? Actually, was that there aren't any other data fields?
There's because we're doing this mostly through survey data, so it's not going to be built into IR2, but those are the main points. Referred to, yeah, we wanted to keep this so it wasn't too onerous.
Great, that's great.
Could you just clarify, there was a question of whether this borrowers are required to do this counseling, if it's just a suggestion for them?
It's basically a referral. It's not required. We didn't want to create, essentially another reason to, I mean, what would be our stick if we required it? Sorry, you can't get your mod. So we wanted to strongly encourage this. We wanted it to be part of the process so they think it's sort of connected, and we do see it as connected. I mean, you're getting a modification, but we want you to be successful. This counseling can help you be fully successful in every way. We were talking to the FICO people and about how modifications impact people, and they were saying, the other credit lines are key. It seems to be that people might get the mod, but they have lots of other debt that are swamping them. So we want to make sure every borrower has every chance for success. So we are going to push this and push it strong, but we are not requiring it, meaning we're not going to penalize the borrower if they choose not to. And let's be clear, some borrowers probably just need the mod. Not many of them, but some.
Sure.
All right. I mean, we have a few more questions, and they're probably better directed to Bruce. They're more about, one is how do you participate? One is, will servicers keep homeowners within the same agency they have worked with or refer them to another vendor? So just a few questions around how agencies can kind of work with servicers. And we've kind of got into that a little bit. If you could maybe just say a little bit more.
This is all, we're going to have to create the templates how this works. I mean, I think it's a logical argument to make when you're approaching a servicer and they're saying they may already have a vendor, to say, well, it would, we would like to be able to continue the counseling with the people we're already working with as the first step in all this, and that would mean that it wouldn't make sense to have you work with somebody on getting the modification and then hand them to another provider to deal with the post-mod work when you already have the established relationship and have already collected all the information, all those things that would be really helpful. So that's a logical step number one. And then number two is to ask them if they have other people in the area that they could refer, that you could be one of the referral places to. So I think those are the two goals in the conversation. I think you'll need to have some kind of a contractual relationship about what the payment relationship is and what you get paid for. I think those are the critical elements.
That's about it. Yeah, there are a few questions, but they've all been along those themes. So I think we've covered the questions pretty well.
Well, so Mark, I think we would like to follow up with you on this convening some communication with the servicers about working with agencies around the country. So maybe we can figure that out offline.
Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable. I mean, we often have we have these events with servicers where we talk about various topics, and maybe at some point we'll have one around the counseling initiative. I mean, they're going to be jammed between now and the end of the year, but after the first of the year, when they're starting to really, sometime soon, I think it would be a good time to get them before they lock in their contracts.
Well, so here's my concern, is that I think servicers are beginning to think about this now.
Yep.
So for people on the phone, March 1st is the implementation moment, but they need to put the systems in.
No, that's right.
Right.
I just have to find a venue in which we can do it, maybe a call or something. We'll see.
Yeah.
We can talk offline.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody, for it's been a packed call here. We did cover a lot of ground and you're doing important work, so appreciate everybody sticking on the call. And we had, well over 106 people I saw on the last time I looked on the call. So we'll look out for an email from Matthew and the SurveyMonkey on the new name for housing counseling. Love you to respond quickly on that. Thanks for all your support. Oh, one other big thing. So, you know, our rule is first and third Thursday of every month, and the third Thursday, actually, we have a conflict, and so we're going to move it a day ahead and do it. The next call will be on the Wednesday, the third Wednesday of the month. We'll send you a notice ahead of time, and in fact, I guess we'll put it in Matthew's note that he sends out. Up and there, it's on the screen as well. So try to plan for that, and we'll keep you informed with all the things that are going on. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Bruce.